Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We'll just give other participants a couple of minutes to just log in, and we'll start at 3 minutes past 3 o'clock. That's UK time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll just give one additional minute for other people to join, then we will start. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on your time zone. Once again, welcome to the webinar today. My name is Quinta Otieno. I am a Kenyan and a WHT scholar at Oxford University, currently pursuing an MSc in Law and Finance. Something interesting about Oxford that no one told me about, and I've discovered in the past 1.5 months, is exactly how windy it is. Nobody warned me about that you could literally lose your umbrella. But yeah, so just thought to mention that for those who will be here next year. So for this webinar today, we are just going to discuss the WHT Scholarship and Leadership Program. We'll share our insights about the application process and respond to some of the queries that were submitted during the webinar registration process. So I'll just give my co-presenters a chance to introduce themselves. Over to you, Blessing.
Hello, everyone. My name is Blessing Abeng. I'm from Nigeria. I'm currently studying an MBA at the University at Said Business School in the University of Oxford, and I am a WHT scholar who is super happy and excited to be here. Vivek.
Hi everyone. My name is Vivek Chovatia. I'm from India and I'm studying my master's in biodiversity conservation and nature recovery at the School of Geography and Environment. Over to you, Rosita.
Thank you so much, Vivek. My name is Rosita, and I was born and raised in Afghanistan. I'm also studying my master's in global governance and diplomacy at the University of Oxford, and I'm a proud WHT scholar. Over to you, Rakib.
So it seems one of our co-presenters, Rakib, has a bit of a challenge with his microphone. So we'll just come back to him in a bit. So in this segment, I'm just going to tell you a bit about the WHT Scholarship and Leadership Program. And I'll just mention a few things that you should keep in mind. And then I'll give my co-presenters a chance to also share their stories. So the WHT Scholarship and Leadership Program aims to cultivate leaders of tomorrow by providing outstanding university graduates and professionals, ideally early career to mid-career professionals, with a chance to study in Oxford. And these professionals should be people from the ideally emerging economies, and a list of those eligible countries is listed in the graduate admissions website for Oxford University. It should also be people who would, without this scholarship, not be able to basically sustain themselves in Oxford. So something else to mention is that this WHT scholarship is a bit different from your typical scholarship. So most scholarships typically just provide you with funding for your studies. What WHT does is that it goes beyond that and also gives you leadership training. And for me, that is one of the primary reasons why I chose to apply for and accept the WHT scholarship. Because at the end of my master's studies, I won't just be living with a postgraduate certificate. I'll also be living with leadership training. And just to mention that this leadership training has three components. One of them is the business challenge, which basically aims to shift our mindsets from, people who just complain about issues to actually being solution providers. And then there's the moral philosophy seminars that allow us to critically engage with certain controversial issues in leadership, in running businesses. And then we have communication that aims to train scholars to better communicate, because as a leader, of course, that's one of the most important tools that you can have. And you can get more information on this leadership program from the WHT website. So to be eligible for the WHT scholarship, and which is something I'd also just briefly touched on before, you need to come from the eligible countries, that is the developing countries. So please make sure to just confirm from the graduate admission website if your country is one of the countries that are listed there. Then the other thing you should note is that the WHT Scholarship and Leadership Program is only exclusive to Oxford. So unlike other scholarship programs, like for example, Chevening, that support people even in other universities, WHT is only for Oxford students. Then the other thing you should also note is that you must be applying to study a full-time taught master's program at Oxford University. So if you're applying for a research postgraduate diploma or degree, then WHT does not support that. It's only for those who are applying for full-time taught master's programs. And a list of those is also listed in the website, in the graduate admission website for Oxford University. So make sure to just confirm if your country is eligible. Make sure to confirm if your course is also eligible during the application process, which we will also talk about. Then something else to mention is that the WHT Leadership Program will cover your full tuition fee for the entire duration of your studies. And then you'll also get a stipend, which is usually about £20,780, which basically just aims to ensure that you can live comfortably and support yourself while in Oxford. And then you'll also get a certain contribution towards your pre-arrival costs. So for example, in our case, we got £2,000 that basically assisted with the visa charges and the NHS charges as well. So those are some of the things you should have in mind when you are applying for the WHT Scholarship and Leadership Program. At this juncture, I would just like to go to my co-presenters to perhaps share with us why they applied for WHT and how WHT will be helpful for them even going forward in terms of their future plans post-Oxford. So Vivek, over to you. Could you please just share with us that? Sorry, Vivek. You seem to still be on mute.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
you are. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Vivek Chowatia, and I'm a current scholar from India, and I'm currently doing my master's in biodiversity conservation and nature recovery. I grew up in the city of Ahmedabad, but my native is in Gir Forest, which is in the Saurashtra region of Gujarat, state in westernmost part of India. And the native region of my state holds the last substantial population of Asiatic lions. So growing up, I was almost always surrounded by nature and wildlife at some point, even when I went to my native place and my village in vacations or during my off-study times. All this experience motivated me to pursue nature-related education as my career, and I did my bachelor's in honors forestry from Navsari Agriculture University, which is a local university in Gujarat, India. After Navsari Agriculture University, after graduating, I worked with local communities back in Gir. I also worked in local communities in South Gujarat and with other local communities in the state of Andhra Pradesh, which is in the South India as well. All these experiences sort of committed me to build an equitable science-based approaches because with conversations with those communities and how sort of management and forest management models, human wildlife interactions are shaped around in these communities in different parts of India, taught me that there is a much needed intervention on policy level. There is a much needed intervention in justice level. And I thought that the Oxford degree would be a stepping stone to enter into that stream. Before coming to Oxford, I was working with Gujarat Forest Department. I was working with Navsari Agriculture University, and I was also working with the Institute of Forest Biodiversity, which is a ministry level institute in Hyderabad, in India. I worked on socioeconomic surveys of tribal people. I worked on socioeconomic surveys of farm forestry people. And I also worked with my college for protected area management plans and farm forestry supply chain management, forest product utilizations, and forest laws and legislations. Through this experience, I learned sort of aligning policy, conservation models, and real-time community needs with all the conservation scenario in India. And I wanted to apply the global current up-to-date models of conservation scenarios back to India. And I thought Oxford would be a good place to go to. The moment I applied to the University of Oxford, I knew that even if I could get in, I would not be able to come to Oxford without a scholarship. And fortunately, I got the WHT scholarship, and all went well on my part. And the main reason for me to apply to WHT was because WHT is not just a scholarship. It is also a community based scholarship, which comes with the leadership program, which is a very unique part of the scholarship because it really gives me a chance to reflect on my pre-esteemed values, my leadership choices, and the kind of impact that I want to make on the local level as well as on the global level. For me, joining WHT came exactly at the right moment in my career and in my life, because I had got experience working with forest communities back home, government systems, but I needed to develop leadership programs and intellectual exposure, which is at a global scale, to network and to scale my impact beyond regional efforts. My goal at the moment is to contribute to nature positive policy, inclusive financial model for conservation of biodiversity and tropical forests, to create nature-based solutions for human-wildlife conflict, and also to drive scientifically rigorous, ecologically and economically just rooted community partnership models in and around Gujarat, India, and in tropical forest areas. And from WHT, I got to learn until the moment I have learned a lot of people from all other scholars. We have few scholars who have nearly 10 years of experience working with the communities in more than 10 countries. And we have scholars who have backgrounds in law, legislations of communities. So I can learn something from everyone together.
Thank
Looking
you so
forward
much.
to
Thank you so much, Vivek, for sharing with us your story. I think maybe we can also just hear a little bit of from Rosita as well on her story and why she applied to WHT and how WHT is relevant for her in terms of her future career plans. Over
Thank
to
you
you.
so much. Thank you so much, Quinter, and also Vivek for sharing your stories. And hello again, everyone. And I hope my story will inspire some of you and it will answer some of your questions as well. So again, my name is Rosita, and I was born and raised in Afghanistan, and I left the country 2 years ago due to the shifting political and limitations on Afghanistan, especially Afghan women. And I went to Italy to study my first master's. So answering some of your questions, that it is possible to have like another master's to apply for WHT. My passion or background is exactly in human rights, but also merging politics. That's why I applied for global governance and diplomacy to study. And I thought of making a difference, a bit bigger difference that we really need for Afghan people and also those who are in conflict affected countries. I also had the belief that studying at Oxford or getting a fully funded scholarship is something that I should not think about it because it is not affordable or maybe for a certain group of people. But WHT was a breaker for that, and it's offered, especially if you go to see the website, it really is very encompassing and inclusive at the same time. So how I got to know about this program in Oxford was from my experience with Refugee-Led Research Hub, which they offered mentorship programs. Some of you might be familiar with. They assign a mentor for you to write your application, but in my opinion, you do not need to have that. It was just, for me, basic information that you can definitely Google for and ask other scholars or your friends to read out your materials if you want to apply. So one of the things that I did was also to connect with some of the scholars, and I got to know more about WHT from their website and also from the scholars, which was very impressive. Why I applied for WHT or why now is because they are not the conventional scholarship program. They offer a community. I built an academic and also work experience both in when I was inside Afghanistan and I also got outside of the country. I worked with some organizations. My work experience is exactly not 10 years or 20 years, but I had like experiences dealing with Afghan women on education, and how can we advocate for the rights of those inside and outside the country. And I thought that this is the time that I can expand my network and get some leadership experiences so that I better implement my projects for Afghanistan and Afghan women. And WHT is exactly the community that will offer to you. So I didn't have any governmental work experiences, and I think it was something that I was like me as myself. And I think that is something that you should also take into consideration. And in my current course, Global Governance and Diplomacy, I'm trying to bring human rights perspective and politics in harmony because there are human rights violations in the country and around the world. So policymakers would definitely be more interested into merging this curriculum. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to my story, and I'm looking forward to share more during our discussion.
Thank you so much, Rosita. So the main reason why we just are sharing our stories is so that each one of us can see, and even each of the participants in the webinar here can see that we all have very diverse backgrounds. Some of us have a bit of experience, some of us don't have as much work experience, some of us applied straight out of our undergraduate studies, some of us, this is our second master's degree, just to show that it's a wide range of people who can apply for WHT, and so you shouldn't lock yourself out. So I would also just like to share some 8 things that you need to bear in mind in terms of the application process. The first is how do you apply for the WHT scholarship, which is like a common question we have gotten. So the WHT scholarship is applied for concurrently with your master's program application. So when you're applying for your master's degree, then under the fees and funding segment, the scholarship segment of the application website, you need to select WHT, and then you will need to complete the application form, which usually has 5 essay questions, each a maximum of 200 words. You'll need to complete that, and then you'll need to submit it together with your Oxford application. So it's done concurrently. There's no separate application process for WHT outside the Oxford graduate application website. You'll need to do it there. Then the other thing that we'll mention here is, and I'll also, my co-presenters will just share with you a few tips for the essays. But the other thing I wanted to mention with this application process is that Oxford typically charges an application fee of £75 for the master's degree applications. However, you can seek a waiver for this. And some of the ways you can seek a waiver for some of the waiver eligibility are if you come from a low income country, so those have been listed in the graduate admissions website. If you, for example, are a refugee or a displaced person. So basically, there are certain circumstances in which you can qualify for a waiver and therefore apply for a waiver for that application fee. So don't let the £75 lock you out. The other thing I just also wanted to mention is from a timelines perspective. So firstly, as I've mentioned before, you'll need to apply for WHT concurrently with your application for the master's program by the relevant course deadline. And that varies for different courses. There are some courses that you need to apply by December, and then there are courses that you'll need to apply by January. So for example, for my course, the MSc in Law and Finance, the application deadline this year was, I think, 27th of January. So you need to apply by then. And then the other thing to mention is that you'll hear from Oxford for your postgraduate degree within maybe 8 weeks from the time you applied. And then WHT, so only if you've gotten the conditional offer will you be considered for the WHT scholarship. So once you've gotten your conditional offer from Oxford, then if perhaps you now have been shortlisted, you'll be invited for an interview between April and May. Then after that interview process, then you'll probably hear from WHT May, June. It varies depending on the year. But if you've not had anything from WHT by May, then you should assume that your application has not been successful. But for those who've done their interviews in May, then you should probably get your feedback maybe by end of May, early June. Sometimes the interviews are also conducted in April. So just be cautious of the timeline, which is also set out in the WHT website. Then the other thing to mention is, so Oxford has a collegiate system where each student is assigned to a particular college. And during the application process, you'll be asked if you have any preferred colleges you want to select or join. So what you should have in mind is that WHT has partner colleges. And sometimes you'll be reassigned if your college perhaps is not a partner college. So you might have gotten into one college, but if it's not a partner college of WHT, then you'll be reassigned to another college. So for example, in my case, I got into St. Hugh's, but was reassigned to St. Anthony's because St. Anthony's is a partner college. Then the other thing I wanted to mention is during the application process, Oxford typically requires people to provide evidence of their English language proficiency. So this could be, for example, in form of English tests like IELTS or TOEFL. So those tests that basically gauge your English language proficiency. There are people who are exempt based on the countries they come from. And then there are people from countries that are required to submit this proof of English language proficiency who can also get a waiver, either based on their work experience, based on the fact that they completed their undergraduate degree, in English. So it was a 4-year degree fully taught in English, then you can request for a waiver. So just take note of that. And also take note of the fact that your English language requirements varies from course to course. So there are courses that require you to have a higher English higher English language proficiency. Then there are those that require you to have a standard English language proficiency. Again, this can also be found in the Oxford University Graduate Admissions website. And a pro tip for anyone who will need to take an English test, please practice in advance. Don't show up into the exam room. Those tests also test speed, not just your knowledge of English. So something else I also wanted to just mention is also just take in mind that you can apply for that waiver. So let that not be a bar. And also that during the application process, you don't need to submit proof of your English language proficiency. You can just leave that tab blank and then you'll submit it once you get your conditional offer, which is what I did in my case. So I left it blank at the application process. Then I got a conditional offer where one of the conditions was just proving my English language proficiency. Then I submitted the proof at that point. So just to wrap up this segment, the other things you should note is that there are courses that require you to pay a deposit once you get your conditional offer, like my course. But if you're applying for a scholarship and you get a scholarship award, you can use that award to request for a waiver. And then in terms of visa, which is the last point I'm just mentioning in this segment, just take note that there are countries that are required to do TB screening. So, and that will cost about $100. So just have that in mind. And also that you cannot apply for a visa for dependents under your scholarship. That was removed in the WH. That was removed, not specifically for WHT, but the UK removed that requirement in, I think, 2023. So that's no longer supported. The ability to be able to get your dependents to apply for visa for dependents. And with that in mind, I would like to just invite Blessing and Rakib to share a bit about their WHT application experience, how WHT fits into their career trajectory, into their stories. So starting with Blessing, why did you apply for WHT? Why did you apply for it now? Is WHT significant in terms of your career plans?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. Thank you, Quinta. So as I said earlier, my name is Blessing, and a lot of my skill is around branding and communications, which is just the fancy way of me saying that I help people find what is unique about them, and I help them communicate that to their target audience. Their target audience could be their customers, their team, their investors, or even citizens. And I've done this in so many ways. In the past, I have founded a business, and I also founded a nonprofit where we trained people with tech skills. And we ended up training, I think, 130,000 people with tech skills and connecting thousands of them to jobs. So it was such a great way to add value within my community. But in building all of the businesses that I had built over time, there was a gap for me, which was figuring out how to create generational businesses that last for a very long time. And that was a skill gap that I had, but also it wasn't something that was unique to me. I found out that not a lot of people know how to build generational businesses or legacy businesses. And I also didn't have a lot of finance skills specifically. And so I wanted to come to an institution like Oxford, which has like 900 years on its back, and learn how to build generational type businesses. And when I decided to do that, at the specific time that I decided to do that, I definitely did not have the amount that the MBA required for me to come to Oxford. And what that meant was I was going to have to postpone or pray or, hope that magic happens. If I was looking at my bank account, I totally would not have applied to Oxford. But then a friend of mine spoke to me and was like, Blessing, you can actually absolutely apply, and there are scholarships available. When I went through the scholarship list within my application, one of the ones that really, really stood out for me was the WHT scholarship, because it wasn't just a scholarship for leaders, but there was this particular part that highlighted within the leadership program, the moral philosophy class. I really did a lot of research, and that moral philosophy class, for the work that I do, which is really about, and the work that I'm going to do, like you asked, Quinta, the work that I plan to do is really around ensuring that African businesses, and the kind of business that I want to build is ensuring that African businesses can be visible and perceived in a way that is equitable. But with that comes a lot of responsibility as well, because how do you tell the stories? How do you know whose stories to prioritize? At what cost? And those are a lot of ethical considerations. My MBA doesn't come with that. But then through the scholarship, I could have access to moral philosophy where I could question this type of things and question this kind of thoughts. And I have not been disappointed so far. In the first week of launch, when we had the moral philosophy class, we had to talk about power. We had to talk about equality, how we perceived equality, and have back and forths about it, find out how people thought about it. And we don't exist in one small world. So you exist with other people in the world. And so figuring out how the goals that you have affect others positively or negatively can be such an empowering tool. Meeting the leaders from other parts of the world as well, that has been insightful, because you're in your head and there's just the way that you see things. But when you meet other people, you can almost relate with their stories or see things from a different perspective. And that has been really, really helpful throughout this experience. And even if I am studying an MBA, the business challenge has also been really unique in its own way, just opening our eyes to, putting us in specific scenarios to have a business idea, test the business idea, do different things. And so that has been really an eye-opening experience for me. I think WHT stands out in that way. And I'm so glad that I chose this specific scholarship and they came through for me in more ways than one.
Thank you so much, Blessing. I think Rakib was able to just fix the technical hitch he had. So I'll invite him to also just share with us his story. Why WHT? Why now? And does WHT have any impact on your future career trajectory? Over to you, Rakib.
Thank you so much, Quinter. Hi, everyone. Apologies for the technical error. I was not being able to unmute myself when I first joined the meeting, so I couldn't introduce myself. So my name is Rakib. I am from Bangladesh. I am pursuing the Bachelor of Civil Law as a Weidenfeld-Hoffmann scholar at Oxford. So before coming to Oxford, I had around 5 years of work experience. So currently I work as a Senior Legal and Compliance Manager at BRAC International. It's a foundation registered in the Netherlands, and they operate across various Asian and African jurisdictions in sectors such as NGO, microfinance services, and social enterprises. So my role involves providing legal advice to my colleagues, coordinating ongoing litigations, reviewing various legal and constitutional documents, and ensuring that BRAC International's activities are complying with the relevant laws and regulations. And before working at BRAC International, I used to work at this local NGO called Bangladesh Legal Aid and Services Trust. So they promote access to justice to people who cannot resort to formal justice mechanisms due to maybe a lack of means or social disadvantages. So after exploring different legal sectors for a few years, I felt the need to, kind of enhance my academic and professional skills. So I could identify there are some knowledge gaps in some specific areas of law, which really motivated me to apply to the BCL program at Oxford. And at the same time, as a mid-career professional, I wanted a more structured professional development opportunity, something that I found quite unique about the WHT scholarship, because no other scholarship provides such a comprehensive leadership program. And as a part of this leadership program, I am engaging in in-depth discussions on ethical leadership, moral philosophy, various leadership styles, and how at the end of the day, they're all connected together. For example, last week, we were discussing about business ethics and how businesses' decision-making can have certain moral implications for our society. But I think most importantly, what is truly unique is I'm having this opportunity to exchange these ideas with a cohort of 29 very talented scholars from 24 different countries. This experience is not only helping me to build my global network, but at the same time, it's also helping me to broaden my perspective on these diverse aspects of leadership. This is definitely going to help me professionally, and I believe this is something that makes a Weidenfeld-Hoffmann scholarship truly unique. And I often tell my peers that this scholarship is not just a financial support, but rather it's an entire transformative leadership journey. And for our audience, one application tip that I would love to give is the fact that the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann scholarship does not require any prior work experience. So although I had some work experience when I applied, it's absolutely fine if you're a recent graduate stepping out into the real world for the very first time. So don't let that hold you back. What truly matters here is your leadership potential, your ability to inspire, to take initiative, and to make a difference. So leadership can shine through in a variety of ways. So perhaps you led a project in your university club, or maybe you organized an event in a community organization, or maybe you took charge in a volunteer group. So it doesn't have to come from a traditional institutionalized workplace. What really counts is your drive to lead and create some positive impact. So it is absolutely fine if you're a fresh graduate with no formal work experience. You can still apply and still get in WST scholarship. Quinter, what about you? What's your experience with WST so far?
Thank you so much, Rakib. And just like Rakib, prior to applying for WHT, I had worked for around 5 years. I had done 2 years as an in-house lawyer and 3 years in a law firm. So for context, I'm a Kenyan qualified lawyer practicing in the projects and infrastructure space. I am extremely passionate about sustainable infrastructure development in Africa because I truly believe that sustainable infrastructure development is directly correlated to economic growth and development for various emerging economies. So by the time I was applying to WHT, I was clear in my mind that this is the space I want to make an impact in. And just to give a bit of context, in Kenya, we experienced finance bill protests, and those protests were directly as a result of increased in taxation and overtaxation by the government. And the rationale that was being given by government was that we need to tax you more so that we can pay for the loans we took to build these roads, right? So that's the problem I want to solve. Does infrastructure development in emerging economies mean that we must overburden citizens with debt and taxation? Those are some of the policy issues that I want to resolve. And that is why, for me, WHT made sense because it's an opportunity to critically think about critical leadership issues. So, for example, in the leadership program, one of the aspects we are looking at is moral philosophy. And the purpose of that segment of the leadership challenge is of the leadership program is to enable you critically examine certain difficult questions in leadership. Must a leader be ethical? Must a leader be moral? Can you have a leader who's immoral, but they're still a good leader? So some of those critical questions are important when you're thinking about making an impact in your community. Then the other thing that also made WHT the right fit for me was this business challenge, where you need to think about us being a solution provider. And even for business owners, grappling with that question of profit versus purpose, which for me directly related to my work. When an investor comes in to build a road for you, what are they prioritizing? Are they prioritizing the infrastructure that they're bringing and the difference it makes for the local communities, or are they prioritizing profit? So for me, the WHT Scholarship and Leadership Program was just the right fit because it provided an opportunity to be trained on these critical issues and to think about these critical issues in a way that transforms my mind and further informs my perspectives. And so that when you go back home to even implement change, you're coming from an informed perspective. And also to just get the experience of other scholars as well. So for me, WHT Leadership Scholarship and Leadership Program was a no-brainer. And more importantly is, not more importantly, but also just to mention, just like Vivek, without this scholarship, I could not afford to come to Oxford. So there's the funding aspect, but then there's also the leadership training aspect. And maybe just to share a few application tips, because I've just skimmed through the chat box and seen there are a couple of questions around the essays. Number one, use the STAR method so that your essay is properly structured. What does the STAR method mean? Speak to a specific situation, talk about the specific task, the action, and the result. Right? So you only have 200 words. And for those 200 words to actually communicate what you wanted to communicate, you need to be able to see what are the most important things you're telling the person who will review your application and how do you structure it in a way that's flowing. That's where the STAR method comes in because it helps you specifically talk about this was the situation, this was the challenge, this is what I did about it, this was the result. Right. And then I've also seen some people mention that the questions center around your values and philosophies. Just speak about your perspective, not what you think the panel would want to hear. Because I think for WHT, it's your authenticity that makes a difference. Your authenticity, which communicates that you're committed to driving positive change, your authenticity, which communicates who you are as a person and what you stand for, because that's the only way you can gauge if who you are is aligned with what the scholarship is trying to advance. So that's tip number 2, be authentic in your application. Tip number 3, because of how limited the words are, I would advise you to practice. So this is not the type of scholarship application that you can just do in a day and submit because you need to cut down everything to just 200 words for each essay question. And finally, and most importantly, you need to bet on yourself. There are people who might feel like can I really go to Oxford? Perhaps I'm not qualified in this way, or I don't have a first class. What I would tell you is bet on yourself. Check on what your department puts as a bare minimum in terms of your academic qualifications. If you meet those, bet on yourself. Don't rule yourself out before the panel gets back to you. And the other thing is that even if you don't get it this time round, it's okay, right? Einstein tried to build the light bulb so many times before it actually worked. So it's okay to try and to try over and over again. Who knows? It could work this first time and it could work maybe another time. So just don't rule yourself out. So at this point, we'll proceed to look at some of the questions that participants submitted during Blessing.
Oh, I just realized that I didn't share application tips. And I think one very important one was vulnerability. It's so easy to think that you need to be perfect and showcase yourself as a specific type of individual. But just remember that WHT is looking for a diverse cohort. Even Oxford in general, when they pick the people for specific subjects, they are looking for a diverse cohort. They're not trying to teach the same people. They don't want a class of robots. So don't try to be too perfect or try to be the way you think you're expected to be. Just be yourself, share your thoughts in a way that is structured, be vulnerable. The thing that you think is like maybe you think is a weakness that might have been bad to someone else, that may be your unique selling point. So if you think that you're in a vulnerable position or something is scary or something, like be honest about that and share that with the team. You would be so surprised how that could change the narrative from the perspective of the person who is reading. Is another human being on the other side reading your application. So tell your story as vulnerably as you can. And then I think somebody asked me about balancing the MBA with WHT. One of the things I really love about the WHT team is that they're so considerate. They created these sessions thinking about all our different work schedules. Sometimes they call our different departments to figure out what timings work. And so far, it's really difficult and rare for you to have a clash, but you will be able to do it. Most things happen in the evening. Some things are virtual, some things are social, some things are serious, some things are weekend. So you would actually find a rhythm. But if you think about it not as a WHT obligation, but as a moment of success or skill improvement, or as something that is part of the experience that you've signed up for, it makes it easier for you to be able to show up at the time that you need to show up, and you'll have a lot of support from the team and your peers as well.
Thank you so much, Blessing, for those very helpful tips. So the first question we got, and which I will direct to Vivek, is how can someone fresh out of undergrad or pursuing an undergrad degree demonstrate their commitment to impact and make the application strong? So maybe Vivek, you can just tell us that in a minute.
Yeah, so typically you do not need a years of experience to be a strong application. What WHT typically looks at is for clarity of purpose, leadership potential, and evidence of public spirited impact. So you need to show initiative, you need to show that you have consistency in values of what you want to achieve, what impact you want to have in your field, and you need to show that the evidence of impact. So even if your experiences are still developing, WHT would want to see potential for long-term leadership in form of public good. And talking of experience, I applied to Oxford and WHT on 5 months of unpaid internship. So hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Vivek. And just as another question, is there an upper age limit? Can someone with several years of experience apply? Do they care if I'm 40 or if I'm 20? Is there an age limit?
There is no strict upper age limit. The scholarship is typically for early to mid-career individuals, including those which have many years of experience, or including those which who do not have experience at all. So yeah.
Thanks very much. And just as another question that's tied to that, although this is more related to the formal Oxford application process for the different programs, must I have a first class to apply to Oxford, or is a second class upper degree okay?
Yes, it's completely okay. Because if you have been doing some extraordinary work outside your academics, say work in an NGO or lead an activist movement, you might miss on some of your academics. So it is completely fine to have a second class. But I would say that you would want to check with the minimum qualification that the degree or the department is asking you, the degree that you are applying to. So do have the minimum qualification that the degree asks for, and I think you are all set to apply.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vivek, for that. The other question we got, and which I will just address to Rosita, what does an ideal WHT scholar look like? And I've seen it severally appear in the chat box as well. Who's an ideal WHT scholar?
So it's a very difficult question, but also kind of easy to answer in my opinion. So I don't really believe that there is a fixed type of a WHT scholar. For example, you say the person is WHT scholar and he is like or she is like this. I don't think so. And from my point of view, maybe it will be also helpful for anyone who is looking for. They can just go to the WHT website. There is like a list of scholars, previous and current scholars. And when you look at their profiles, you can just see that everyone is doing something different. And in here, for example, in this distinguished panel, we have people from law background, from MBA, myself, global governance, or other, type of degrees. So I think it is more of like a why you, for example, standing out of others. But what I would suggest to you is that maybe to think of more of a way that highlights your leadership potential. Like if you have led something, if it is like a smaller circle, a bigger circle, then you can just show like your leadership potential and that your commitment to change something inside your community and that has created some change or has the potential to change something important, and you are able to demonstrate that you can lead an initiative, right? And not necessarily a world problem, but an important initiative in itself that solves a problem or maybe has the potential to solve too. This is my answer to this question.
I feel like if I could even just add to that, something that is really something that could show you that there is no ideal type is like look within this room. We're all very different. Some people have no years of experience. I have over 10 years of experience. Experience like our age distribution is also very different. But the point there is like we want to see people who look very, very different. And that's why we're all coming into WHT. And I guess that's what the WHT team might be looking out for. We don't know, like we can't tell you this is the specific thing they look out for. But from my experience, everybody I've met is very different, very diverse, brings unique perspectives, looks different, has different goals. Even people who are studying the same course are approaching that very differently as well. So I guess the uniqueness of your perspective, how you're planning to apply that, why you, like Rosita said, can be the thing that makes the biggest difference in general.
Yeah, just to point out, Blessing is very, very right, and maybe it will make it easier for everyone. Like I can give an example that what I wrote in my application. So, of course, the questions are different for each year, but there was a question like of a leadership type, and I had some experiences, but I particularly chose one thing, which was like very deep and close to my heart. And it was like years ago, at least like 7 years ago, that I was at my university, and then we started from scratch to have a debating, like a tournament, something for my class. And then people were like coming there. We didn't have any resources. We didn't have like a lot of funding for that, but it was just like a voluntarily base that I was coaching the team, and we were successful in, for example, running our debating. So I like try to connect that back, like how it gave me leadership skills, how, for example, I saw the impacts, and I think that is something that you can think of it.
So thank you so much, Rosita. Thank you, Blessing, for those very helpful perspective. What I will say though is that if you go to the website to look at the previous WHT scholars, please don't let that intimidate you. Provided you're committed to impact, provided you want to do something for your society, for your country, write your story. Yes, so because I feel like sometimes, at least it was my experience, when I went to the website, everyone looked so accomplished. And I was like, can I even get this thing? But then in my heart, I know what I want to do for my country. I know why I'm very passionate about it. And even though, for example, I have not, run an nonprofit organization, there is something have done in the past that demonstrates I can take action, that I don't sit around and wait for people to solve problems. So that's something I just wanted to mention. Don't be intimidated. Then the other thing I also wanted to mention is, sorry. The other thing I also just wanted to mention is just share your story. That's what they're looking for. Just share your story. And even where they've just asked you to talk about your values, there's a way that you can use stories to also demonstrate your values. So you don't necessarily need to take out the leadership experience when you're responding to questions about values. So Rakib, there's another question here. Oh, sorry, before we go to Rakib, there's just a question here addressed that I would like Blessing to help us address. Are there any countries that WHT has a particular preference for?
I don't think so. Outside of the eligible countries that are listed, I don't think so. I think that if you feel like if your country falls under that, go ahead, apply. It's really about you, it's less about your country, it's less about all these other things. Don't let anything get into your head. I don't even think it's that much about your first class. Like it doesn't, all those things don't matter. Like your story, what you want to do with your life, your values, your career. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like, I want to be the president of the nation. It doesn't have to be that clear. It could just be, this is my passion. I need the steps so I can figure out this other big thing, but this is what I'm working towards, and this is the difference that I want to make. Once you're within the eligible countries, I think you're fine. All of us are from, like, most of us are actually from very different parts of the country. I remember us having this particular session during lunch week where people had to point their countries on the map so that the rest of us could know where they're from, because like that's how diverse we are. That's how unique it is. So don't let any of that limit you. You'll miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And once you start making up all these excuses, it could be a limiting factor for you, and you don't need that. So no country is out of bounds once you're within the eligible countries, and please apply. But remember that there are limited opportunities. I think they take a limited number of people because of course funding is limited, but then it could be you, right? But if you're not chosen today, it doesn't mean you wouldn't be chosen tomorrow. And it doesn't mean you should beat yourself down. Yes, some people may have told more compelling stories than you this one time, but it doesn't mean next time you wouldn't be the person who stands out. So don't limit yourself. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thanks, Blessings. Thanks, Blessing. We've also seen several questions around what the business challenge entails. So maybe you can just tell us that in 1 minute before we proceed to 2
Keeping
hours.
that really short and sweet. Don't overthink it. I'm going to paint a picture for you. When you come in here and you're like, oh, what is the business challenge? It's very simple. A group of people come together. We have a bunch of problems that we know are world problems that are plaguing the world. So we all decide and we agree, like, this is the problem that I want to solve as a group, not as a group, not your idea that you came from home with, but as a group. And then based on those ideas that you've come together to, like, based on the problem you said you want to solve, you could then think about solutions, and you go through the process of learning. We have really great consultants who go through the process of teaching us and telling us this is how to do a business plan. This is how to think about an MVP. And even if I am an MBA student, putting myself in a situation where I have to practice what I'm being taught every single day, see things from the perspectives of people who are non-business people with no business backgrounds, thinking about the perspective from political angles and all of these things brings this level of diversity of learning that is really, really useful. So when you're asked questions about the business challenge, think through the thing you can contribute within a business or within, because we all have very different skills, right? So think about, if you were put in a business challenge, what would you contribute? That's really what that question is asking you. If you had to start a company with other people who are thinking about these ideas, how would you go about it? What would you bring to the table in that particular scenario? There are people who have gone on to take those business challenges and make them into real life companies that are truly changing the world. So come here with an open mind. It's just here to teach you and train you to be very entrepreneurship minded, beyond just being like a 9-to-5er or someone who is thinking about, if politics doesn't work out, or if this career doesn't work out, is there a different way of solving this problem that you really care about? It's giving you options. So yeah, that's what I would say it is. Does anybody else have a different perspective or like something else they would like to add?
Thanks so much, Blessing. I think you've summed it up very clearly on what people need to think about when they think about the leadership, the business challenge. I would also mention that the WHT website is very helpful in terms of just understanding the different components of the leadership program. So we have another question here for Rakib, which I think you may have touched on a bit, but has also come up. Can I apply for WHT if I already have a master's degree? Or can I apply for, WHT if I'm applying for a second master's degree? Can I apply for 2 courses in Oxford and still apply for WHT? So maybe you could just speak to that in a minute.
I think when Rosita was explaining her story, I think she already covered it quite a bit, that she's also pursuing her second master's here. So a one-line answer would be, there are no restrictions to pursue a second master's at Oxford as a WHT scholar, but you have to demonstrate, I would say, 3 things. So first of all, you have to explain that you have this commitment to leadership and positive impact. And secondly, you have to demonstrate why you really need that second master's and how that second master's is going to help you in your career. And thirdly, you have to show that your goals are aligned with the visions of WHT. So as long as you can sort of exhibit these 3 points in your scholarship application, there is no way that someone will bar you from pursuing your second master's at Oxford. And I think even if you apply to multiple programs, you can still apply to WHT. I'm not really sure. You have to really check whether that each of those programs are eligible in the WHT's website or not. So yeah, I applied only to one program, so maybe I'm not the best person to answer about it. But if you guys have any other views on this.
Thank you for that. So personally, I also just applied for one program, which was under the list of eligible courses. So I don't know if anyone else in the panel has some insights to share on that. If not, we'll have this addressed in the updated FAQ that will be uploaded to the WHT website as well.
I quickly go for this because I did that quickly. So I applied for 2 courses. One was international relations, and the second one was this one that I got in. But I got to know that you have to be careful about that. For example, you have to apply for maximum 2 taught courses because I forgot that line, but it's in Oxford. But for WHT, as Quinter mentioned, we can have it like in a Q&A session document.
So thank you so much. There's one very important question here before we take one burning question from the participants. Is it mandatory for scholars to go back to their country of origin? And that I'll hand over to Rakib to just tell us a bit about that.
So I believe the aim of the WHT scholarship is to equip the scholars with the knowledge, the network, and basically the skills that they need to contribute positively in their home countries or their regions of origin or their country of residence. However, the Weidenfeld-Hoffmann Trust also understands that in certain exceptional circumstances, it is not always possible to immediately go back to your country right after completing your course. And I think in this era of globalization, you can contribute to your home country sitting in any corner of the world. So, yep, I think there is some flexibility to it.
All right.
I think there was a stats one time that I came across around how 83% of WHT scholars are adding value to their country of origin through the work that they do. And that could be like working with the WHO or working with the World Trade Organization, like bilateral places that you can work, or you just positioned in a position where you can make a difference to your home country. And I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Blessing. I think there's one other question that I'll just give anyone of us in the panel to respond to. And I'll rephrase it to cover additional questions because I've seen it in the chat. For the essay questions, should we answer based on our experience or should we give our views? And that I think I'll give to, who wants to take that? I think I'll give it to Blessing.
I think both, if I may, and don't just think about the essay. Like first, I think I should say this, that you shouldn't only think about WHT application as a WHT application. Think about your Oxford application and the WHT application because it's one cohesive body of work and one cohesive story. In many parts, you can share your experience and the question will tell you what to say, right? But also share your views within that experience because the experience is not independent in itself. I think there's a question where, we were asked about empathy versus something else. Like, which would you prioritize?
Vision.
Versus what? Vision. Yes, exactly. Empathy versus vision. Which would you prioritize? I shared my experience. Like I said, what I thought, but I also shared why I thought it. You can't just say, I think this thing and expect that the person who is reading will read your mind. Why do you think that way? You could then use your experience to buttress that point, or you share your experience and then make a point based on like what you took out of that experience or what that like how that resonated with you or what that made you think. It's really about figuring out how you think and what you value more than it is about you sounding perfect. And I think that's what we've been trying to say all through this chat. But does anyone else have something to add?
So Vivek, do you have anything to add? I think we will now, if there's nothing else.
Just blessing on this as well, because like I think it should be both. It would be both, yeah.
All right, thank you so much. We've come to the tail end of the webinar. Unless there is a particularly burning question that anyone would like to just post up in the chat right now. But we have tried as much as possible to just respond to the questions as we were going along. So I really do hope that the webinar has been helpful for everyone who's taken the time to attend. We appreciate it's a Sunday afternoon, morning, evening, so we appreciate you being here. And then thank you so much for staying through the webinar and for the very engaging questions, which we hope we have answered and responded to. If there's anything we've not responded to, we'll make sure to just make sure that that is included in the FAQ as well, so that you get a response to your particular questions. Otherwise, thank you so much. Please apply. Please don't lock yourself out before don't tell yourself no before someone tells you no. So make sure you apply and make sure that you follow WHT on all the relevant platforms.
Oh, wait, Quinta, before we say goodbye, should we all share one amazing thing that we've all experienced with the WHT program, hoping that that could inspire someone to, do the application now? Let's start with you, Quinta.
Of course. Thank you, Blessing. One very interesting thing I've experienced with the WHT program is the business challenge. And for me, I will keep saying that over and over again. But before I started this leadership program, this leadership training, I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur, simply because I'm a bit risk averse. But what WHT has taught me is that there's an aspect of problem solving that comes with entrepreneurship that's an important skill and very transferable, not even limited to those who are running businesses, but even in other positions of leadership. The kind of problem solving skills that you learn in that business challenge are very integral. So for me, that's something that has stood out. And in fact, yesterday we were interviewing people on the streets to validate our different business models, which was quite interesting.
That's fantastic, Rosita.
I think for me, one of the interesting things that I experienced, one of them, is that I made friends from the countries that even I've never heard before. And I think it's very important, and it's also raising awareness in a way that you are connecting not just with the community that you had, but like it's expanding your community. And it's very interesting because you have your friend from that country and they're the first one. So it's like very interesting for me.
Oh, nice. Rakib.
I think I will also talk about the business challenge, and I found it quite interesting. Like being a person from a law background, I had no idea about business, and now we are making this business on agrotech. I had no idea about business. I had no idea about agriculture, but here I have my team from India, from Serbia, from Argentina, and from Kenya, and we are trying to come up with this business idea from knowledge and experience that we have gathered from our home countries, and we are trying to make it work. So that's something that is really interesting, and I never thought that I would do something like this. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Oh, thank you for sharing. What about you, Vivek?
I would go with moral philosophy. I had never had a chance to do philosophy and do philosophical readings and discussion before, coming from the STEM background. But yeah, now I know it is hard. It is it is eye-opening, and you get to understand a lot of different perspective and sort of change the way you think. So moral philosophy, the most interesting thing for me so far.
Oh, before I share what is really special for me, I think there's a burning question here, and I think maybe Quinta should answer it. If the impact I want to make or create is initially related to my country and not global, will it make a difference in a negative sense in my application? Quinta, what do you think?
No, it will not. Absolutely not, because charity begins at home, right? So if you can truly show that this is something that's important for your country, then absolutely it will not impact your application in a negative way. For example, my application, even though it focused on Africa in general, I also zoomed into Kenya because I had live examples of how, unequitable infrastructure development had brought problems, unsustainable debt, overtaxation of citizens in Kenya. So absolutely not. It do not impact your application in a negative way. Go ahead and apply.
Yep, I agree with Quinta. And Bisola was asking about a moral issue that was asked in the questions this year, and they're asking what makes it morally complicated. How best do we approach this? I think in our year we also got something similar, but to be honest, just share what you think. What do you genuinely think about it? If you were to argue for the other side, what would be your position? If you were to argue for this side, what would be your position? And then go back and forth with yourself about that. And I think there was one more question around interviews and interviewing, and I think I skipped that. So sorry, guys. So interviewing, I think my interview experience, I had two people interviewing me. And they asked me, was that the same for all of you? I think I had two people interview me. And it was such a great experience because genuinely, they're not trying to make you feel, they're not trying to have a gotcha moment or whatever. It's really, we read this about you and we made these assumptions. We want to know more. And that's really what an interview means. And so in wanting to know more, they expect you to share some things, not things within your application itself, but like things beyond your application. Give them perspective, give them insight. They want to hear how you think to be sure. Like, I mean, we want to know that it's not ChatGPT that wrote it for you, right? So, but I think it's beyond that. It's not just about ChatGPT, but it's about like we want to get to know you better
And
and get to have insight about you, right? And so that was the experience that I got from my interview. Whenever they will ask questions, please follow Quinta's guide on using the STAR method, but also answer honestly, answer genuinely. Say you don't know when you don't know, but share how you are thinking about the thing. Don't just be like, I don't know, and stop there. Be like, I don't know because, and then you share why you don't know. If you're having two separate thoughts that are counter arguments to themselves, say the thoughts, counter the thought, and say, you really don't know where you stand right now, but these are the things that are going through your mind. It's really more about how you think than what you think, and always remember that. So my thing, we're going to stop
Sorry,
taking
sorry,
questions.
sorry. So I just wanted to mention that you may have noticed that during this session we haven't really gone deep into the interview process, and that's because we wanted to focus the session a bit more on the application process,
Applications.
which is what you're grappling with at the moment. Should I apply? Am I eligible? If I want to apply, how do I apply? How do I answer those questions? So we haven't really gone deep into the interview process. We might probably organize another session maybe sometime next year on the interviews. But for now, we haven't really delved deep into it because we know at the moment what's more challenging or more relevant is just the application process. So maybe Blessing can just share her interesting thing and then we can wrap up.
Yes, finally. Okay, so my interesting thing, I've had so many interesting things. I really loved the Oxford essay that we had to write. We had to write a letter to ourselves, and that was really beautiful for the future. That was really nice. I also really loved a lot of our moral philosophy conversations, going back and forth with each other about the things that we think, the biases that we have, and how sometimes you feel so strongly about something, but you never really think about how it affects someone else. So that has been great. Hanging out with you all, the dinners, so many social activities, and that has been fun as well. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to help Quinta wrap up and say, please don't give up on yourself before anyone even takes a chance on you. Like, totally apply. You miss 100% of the shots that you do not take. So please take the shot. Don't cancel yourself before you've even been considered. Please apply, apply. Follow us on think about this as not the end of the webinar, or I mean, it's the end of the webinar, but it's not the end of the process, right? So think about this as the beginning of your journey. Follow on social media, on Instagram and LinkedIn. You're going to be able to get more support, more information. You can DM, you can ask questions, but even better, you get to see this journey of people who are currently living the life that you're hoping to live, and that could give you insights as you go through your application or inspiration. Thank you so much for joining. Have a lovely day, and we hope to see you in Oxford next year.